the bar is low. The bar is in hell when it comes to the quality of outbound that we are sending to our customers. And so the result is from that growth at all cost phase that outbound messaging right now is bad. It's really bad because many teams have lost the plot on what a good message looks like.
Welcome back to the B2B Playbook, where we believe great go-to-market is about people, not platforms. That belief gets tested a lot in sales, and sales was supposed to evolve. It's 2025, but most teams are still running playbooks from 2011. Spray and pray, SDR cadences, and pipeline at all costs. In this episode, we've got sales legend with us, Leslie Venetz, founder of the sales-led go-to-market agency, and Adem Manderovic, founder of Closed Circuit Selling and CRO School. And they're here to unpack why so many outbound motions still fall apart, even when they start with good intent. Together, they're going to explore how to build a commercial flow that really replaces that brute force with trust, doing things around buyer timelines, and having system-level alignment between sales, marketing, and customer success. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here.
Thank you, gents, for having me. It's going to be a great discussion.
And Adam, as always, we have you a fair bit on the podcast, and I'm always excited when you can join us too. So thank you for being here.
Hey, look, with that intro, but also don't downplay your contribution.
All right. Well, Leslie, I want to kick into it. I think a lot of our audience would have heard about you, but for those who haven't, could you tell us a little bit more about maybe your mission and what you're doing at the sales-led go-to-market agency?
Yeah, I feel like those are oddly different. I think my mission, the legacy I want to leave is helping to transform sales into a more respected, more inclusive profession. That is what I hope people say about me. When I am no longer on this mortal coil, the work I am currently doing, very top of funnel focused. And that for me means everything from territory strategy through to sales messaging to hosting exceptional sales conversations and centering the buyer in all of that. And prior to the last, I'm just only in 4 years as a full-time founder. Prior to that, I spent over 15 years as an individual contributor, as a player coach, as a multi-times sales leader for second, third line sales leadership. So I've done all the roles, I've sold to all the ICPs, and now I get to bring it all together in my consulting gig.
That is awesome. I love that your mission is to try and make people, want to get into that sales profession as well too, and see it as something that's aspirational. Adam and I caught up and had the founder of Humantic on the podcast recently, Amarpreet, and he actually said something similar. And he said how 500 years ago, doctors were kind of seen as charlatans. And now, of course, they're like, one of the most respected professions you can have. And so he said, I'd love to do the same thing for sales and make it, one of the most respected professions and ground it in humanity and honesty and being all about being as helpful as possible, I suppose. So I think it's really cool to hear.
Oh, I love to hear that because I have done work with Humantic for years. I have equity in the company, so go Humantic.
Oh, okay. Well, fantastic. You're obviously very, very well aligned then. Oh, that's amazing. Leslie, you've said the phrase, earn the right quite a few times, and that people need to earn the right before they sell. Could you tell us, for those who don't know, what that really means and what that looks like in a real outbound motion today?
Yeah, I use the phrase earn the right so much that now people have started quoting me. As Leslie Venetz says, you have to earn the right. And I'm like, oh, I've done it. Look at me go. I think of it as a litmus test. And so I use it as a challenge to myself before I am doing any interaction with a prospect. And the challenge is really simple. Hey, before I send this email, what have I written in the email that earns me the right to even ask the prospect for their attention? As I'm preparing for this discovery call, how have I done my research, connected the dots, prepared a point of view so that I am earning the right to their time and then to ask for their consideration and ultimately their business? So at all points in my interaction with prospects, I ask myself, and I want all sellers to ask themselves, what am I doing to earn the right to ask for this buyer's attention, their time, their consideration, their business?
Okay, I think that's like breaking it down nice and simple for people. But why do you need to keep saying that to people? What is going on today out there?
Again.
Why do people need to keep hearing this? What is going on?
Oh my gosh. So before we went live, we were talking about how I have my book coming out in August, and the subtitle for the book is A Proven Formula to Earn Trust and Drive Revenue. And I got pushback from both my publisher and my brand strategist on the earn trust piece, because book titles are supposed to pass the I want test. Like, I want a profit generating pipeline. I want to drive revenue. And they challenged me, do people want to earn trust? Does that pass the I want test? And I said, frankly, no. Frankly, no, I don't think that's what people are out there saying. Oh, the most important thing I want to do today in my sales job is show up to earn trust. But it is so fundamental to my values, to my philosophy about how we should sell and how we should interact with our buyers, that I said the book is not worth writing if I cannot keep that core message in front of it. So it's a very long way of saying the reason that I have to keep repeating to folks, hey, have you earned the right to make that ask of your buyer, is because we deeply underestimate the importance of trust in the selling and buying process.
Adam, I'd love to get your take on that as well, as someone who has been, also in a head of sales role. Where do you see the role of trust and how important it is? Has it changed? Is it evolving? What's your take on that?
I think first we need to establish of how we got here and why that's the landscape. If we look at the book of Aaron Ross, Predictable Revenue, and how that changed the landscape of the measurement to book meetings to mass MQLs, and that changed the tools, which then curbed the behaviours. So a lot of the fundamentals that Leslie is speaking to, unequivocally correct, but they've been washed out of the current landscape between sellers, marketers, and C-suites, and they've never actually seen outside of the broken model. Therefore, there is a requirement at market for all of these fundamentals to be taught back in of how to do them the right way. So that then is obviously very smart by Leslie to be working into that niche, because she's being able to play on the fact that most companies have no idea what those fundamentals are and what those pillars are and how to earn the right. Because if you're only measuring meetings, you're generally not earning the right? So yeah, it's an interesting, I was going to say, paradigm of where we are right now, because what we've built with CRO School and what Leslie is also teaching, which are core fundamentals, aren't taught at market anymore, and generally that's why the requirement exists.
Can we stay on something that you said for a second, Adam? Because I think it's really important, because often when we talk about trust in sales, people think that it's just the trust, like buyers need to trust us. But what you just said is so much bigger than that like sellers don't trust their sales leaders don't trust their executives don't trust their sales leaders, buyers don't trust us, we don't trust our buyers. Like, it is eroded at every level throughout the profession and all of our interactions. And that is deeply problematic.
Yeah. And I know people think that I'm like pretty crazy, and I'm sure I'm still in a few WhatsApp and Slack hate groups, but I'm going to die on this hill that people should be listening of what these fundamentals are and what those downstream commercial repercussions are. And that's exactly right? And until we get those back, there's still going to be a market requirement for teaching them.
So just to pare things back a bit, Leslie, when you go into a company and they're doing outbound that you would deem as, bad or less than ideal, what does that look like?
It's pretty much all outbound. Is less than ideal. And I say that to say that the bar is low. The bar is in hell when it comes to the quality of outbound that we are sending to our customers. And Adam, you're talking about like the predictable revenue playbook and this interesting time that we are in that started with that like growth at all costs era. And we're still seeing like the tail end of it right now, where it was more and more, hire more reps to hit our revenue goals, do more outreach, send more messages, do whatever it took. It was do more of it very poorly instead of, hey, let's actually focus on our conversion ratio so that we don't have to do more. We can just do better and still get the same results. And so the result is from that growth at all cost phase, that outbound messaging right now is bad. It's really bad because many teams have lost the plot on what a good message looks like. And so they are, I see a couple of things. I think one is that I see a lot of emails that are technically written very beautiful. If you have a Reggie AI or a Lavender and you're looking at the score, these are like high 90s emails that say nothing. Another big issue that I see is that for so many years we've been told over and over again that every single email requires contact level personalization, which I think is absolute bullshit. But the contact level personalization that we're getting isn't even something meaningful. It's just reading the news back to our prospects. Hello, I saw that you are the founder at company. Hello. In today's sales landscape, I believe your LinkedIn posts are game changing. Like it is, it's not actually personalization. It is disingenuous and it is meaningless. So I see the same challenges over and over again. I think folks are trying, like they are trying to write these 100 out of 100 emails. They're trying to follow this guidance of contact level hyper personalization because that's what they've been told will move the needle. But what they are missing is relevance. They are missing what makes my message matter to the buyers. So that is always going to be the first thing that I start with. How can we better understand the group of buyers we are reaching out to so that we can create segment-specific value props and messaging that they give a heck about?
Do you think, Leslie, sorry, George, I know you're probably going to ask the same question. But a lot of the stuff that we speak to, which is market validation by cataloging the market, would actually solve that problem. But so many of the market, like I'd probably say 99% of the market, and most of the people that see the stuff that we've put out on LinkedIn for probably the last 5 years, have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. But if you lead with cataloging the market, who they're with right now, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, when the grass is greener, when do they look at better options, are they in a fixed term contract, without having to hard sell, you're almost guaranteeing that one, you're going to get to the opportunity stage, and two, you can go back to marketing with, George, I think if you guys built us this in 3, 6, and 9 months, we can get to the table with these guys. Do we also have other personas where we can use that for? That skill has completely washed out of business development since Aaron Ross's model, whereas that would actually solve all of the things you're saying, right? But no one knows how to do it, and it's like, big Fortune 500s like in finance in Australia, that's probably bread and butter basics where people aren't even talking about it because it's so obvious. Whereas we're out here going, we can apply this to every single industry and here's how. And people, as you know, people have put me in hate groups probably the last 5 years saying I'm fucking crazy. But like, it should be that simple, because if you're not leading to push them into something that they don't want to do, and you're actually showing them where they could get to and how they can get there and what makes sense for them, you've actually broken down all of those barriers of what you've said. But it's just super interesting, right? Like, how did we get here where that teaching these fundamentals is now a requirement at market against the whole market pushing the opposite direction where they'll do anything possible except what they should do? So yeah, like, it's just an interesting landscape, right?
It is. And I think the very short answer is that we need to go back to strategic territory management. Which is something that has also been lost in like the last decade because we have moved in so many organizations to the SDR AE alignment, and many organizations like the SDR AE alignment is not appropriate. They should have just stayed with a full cycle AE role, that we have lost the art of being like, do you remember like the CEO of territory mindset? Like, that was how I grew up in sales, is that they wanted you to be the CEO of your territory. So you would get your list of accounts, but you would, before you picked up the phone, look at your accounts to be like, okay, who are my low hanging fruit? Who are my lookalike accounts to this person I just closed? Like, you would really take that strategic lens on who can I call that's most likely to say yes to me now. And that is not an inherent approach that I see in teams.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Like, it's just, we've got to wind back what everyone did prior to that sales development industrial complex bureaucracy of doing more dumb shit. Like, we've just got to wipe that away and go, okay, what did we do before that actually made sense, brought organizational alignment, and here's how to do it. Forget what you think you know. Start here. But yeah.
Can that be the title of this episode? SDR industrial complex : do less dumb shit.
It's a working title. I like it.
I feel like I've made it now if Leslie's quoting me. So
I mean, Leslie, unless you want it as the byline for your book, you can have that as well.
Thank you. So generous.
So does that then mean, like, when you did have the full cycle AE and there was a real emphasis on being the CEO of your territory, did that help marketing and sales alignment back then or not? Was it still extremely disjointed, or as disjointed as it is today?
I think it was still extremely disjointed, but I think it was just the sales and marketing alignment was disjointed for another reason, and it's because that was the time of attribution above all else. Because we had just come out of the Great Recession and we had just seen so many of our marketing counterparts get fired because they couldn't prove their worth. And so then the response to that was that marketing really needed to be able to track the dollars and cents and track their contribution to funnel. So they started fighting tooth and nail for attribution, when anybody that has worked in a good corporation that has great marketing sales alignment knows that, like, straight line attribution is bullshit. And that's not what serves the buyer. If it is that easy to attribute the majority of your leads to this one touch point, you're doing a shitty job, because they should be engaging on different channels with different materials and probably with sales and with marketing and maybe at events. So I think that there were significant issues with sales and marketing alignment, but I would attribute them to attribution. I would point to attribution being the culprit at that time.
I would add a caveat, George, if I may, and I'm sure Leslie will back us up here. The only time where it was better is when the CEO of your territory actually acted like a CEO of your territory and ran off and did what I did and just pilot doing market validation by yourself and then running that back to marketing, like at completely rogue. Like, even if you were measured by doing meetings or open opportunities, if you went and did this other way of going to market, I guarantee that's where the alignment was. But if you weren't doing that, then there would, as Leslie said, it was more like fighting over territory then, because they have to fight for that distribution so they don't get fired. So, if
I've had some interesting. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, if they go rogue and they market validate first and they take that to marketing, yes, there was alignment, but that was few and far between, because if that was highly prevalent, we wouldn't have been able to build CRO school with these hard lines and these 5 pillars across the funnel, right? Because everyone would have understood and agreed that we were right from the start. There wouldn't have been a requirement for the teaching. So, yeah.
I was going to back you up as I got the Venmo request came in, so I was just ready to back you up. But I've worked with really not good organizations that had intentionally pit marketing and sales against themselves. But I've also had the privilege of owning marketing myself, like really literally owning the entire revenue cycle. I worked for a branding agency for a bit where marketing very much served sales and they were extremely helpful. And then I also worked for an organization where marketing was like, heck yeah, cool, let's try that. And so they were a deeply collaborative partner. So I think the perspective of having marketing as a true support partner, owning marketing, and also having marketing as a true collaborator, it bolstered my confidence in being a bit cavalier in saying, I want to test this and I'm okay with knowing that I might fail and have egg on my face. But based on 15 years of expertise and experience and what I know about the market and what I know about what's worked in all these situations, I think it's worth trying, and having enough confidence in my belief that it was worth taking that creative approach, that marketing was willing to collaborate with me. But that's how most of my huge successes, the milestone successes, have come about, is saying, let's do this weird thing.
Yeah.
Adam, has that been your experience too?
Yeah. I was just going to say, added to that, do you feel that the solution that we're both talking about here, with how to actually sell the right way with a buyer frame in mind and bringing marketing on the journey through doing those validations, is kind of like how, if people just got out of looking at the Aaron Ross model and looking at growth at all costs and actually looked at or even studied how enterprise motions interact with procurement teams, that actually know how to actually sell to people that want to buy, and they'd market validate, and they'd bring marketing on the journey. And you'd be able to then replicate your time across the funnel and make it commercially viable, because you'd know, okay, George, could you build us this in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, which is when they're going to come into, because that's how procurement actually sells, right? And I know that you know that because
Yeah.
I've watched your stuff for a long time, but it's just
Yeah.
like yeah, I try not to be aggressive in the fact that like this is market obvious, like, but it's not market obvious to the people that have only ever seen the broken models in each sales methodology that's pushed them in the opposite direction to not actually study how the market actually works.
I don't know. For people that don't know me, I did sell directly to the chief procurement, like Fortune 500 chief procurement title for nearly 4 years. Grew the US market for a UK based company very successfully. I can sell to that tough, maybe one of the toughest personas, them and CIOs. I am not convinced that chief procurement officers are like, I do not think that we should put them on a pedestal as an example of how to buy, because some of them really were terrible.
Yeah. Okay.
Even at the Fortune 500 level, some of them were incredible. Like I got worked over in a deal with a like Fortune 100 financial institution by their CPO so good that after I got off the call and I had agreed to everything, and then somehow she like came back in, I got worked over so good for adding both more value and giving a discount on that deal that I had to like take a beat afterwards. So it was like, that was like the most impressive negotiation I've ever seen in my entire life. So I'm not shitting on CPOs. I'm saying I'm not sure they're the exact example that I would use as best in class buying.
Yeah.
But I do think you're onto something, Adam, with the enterprise piece, because I have spent so much of my career selling to enterprise executive leadership, and the way they buy is quite a bit different than the way maybe like small businesses or even like startup founders buy. And I think what that has given me is the gift of understanding the importance of repeatability. And that it doesn't matter if your like cute thing worked one time. It doesn't matter if, oh, you did this and it closed this one logo and woo, because what might feel significant when you're tracking towards 10 or even 100 logos as a startup is deeply insignificant when you are a large organization that is doing tens of millions of dollars a year. And it's not about your first 10 logos. It's about, okay, we need to bring on at least 10 new logos every single month to maintain our net new logo goals, retaining X amount of additional revenue. And that doesn't happen if you do not have repeatable processes. And repeatable processes do not happen if all you are doing is like hiring more people to hit your goals or sending more outbound to get enough attention that you can hit your goals. It only happens through being super, super precise in your messaging, in your conversion rates, in your interactions.
So do you feel that for that reason that we should be looking and teaching the core fundamentals from what we use in commercial upstream, downstream, because you're never ever going to be put over hot coals for doing more of the right stuff properly? Because if it works on a contract over $5 million, I guarantee doing the right stuff over a contract over a $30,000 ACV is still going to work, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's more difficult. It just means following the structure, like you said, of doing the right things at the right time, which seems to be completely washed out of the market on the low end for all of them that have followed all of the broken sales methodologies. They don't seem to recognize or have the positional awareness to see if we just followed what we should do upstream, downstream, we wouldn't actually have any of the problems that we're running into right now, because we would have actually hit the core fundamentals right across the funnel. It just seems like they don't have the awareness to see that. And there's you know what LinkedIn's like. There's people out there spruiking advice that have never actually done any of the things that they're saying they're going to do, and it wouldn't actually work. And those posts might go viral, and then that just keeps feeding the beast. So it's super interesting.
Yeah. It is. So I think, yes, and A warning that I continually issue is before you take advice that somebody gives you on LinkedIn, make sure that they are qualified to give you the advice, and then make sure that advice actually is for you, meaning that if they are a founding AE at a startup and they are telling you how they close their first 3 logos, that might not apply to you if you're an enterprise AE and vice versa. But that made me think of 3 different things. One, when I come in and I start engagements with organizations, regardless of their size, I always start with active listening, and often like active listening and then time management. And so I think that there are fundamental truths that are core to sales success, regardless of the organization. And I see those largely missing regardless of the org size or the team size. I think there are some strategies that scale. So let me give you an example of a strategy that scales well and one that scales terribly, or downscales that you take from. What would be the opposite of scaling? If you're going from enterprise down to not enterprise, the way that I saw people use mutual action plans that might work if you are selling like a 6-figure sale, but they are not appropriate if you are selling something that's like $1,000 a month. That's a bad example of trying to drag and drop something that's great at the enterprise into smaller orgs. But do you remember 2 years ago when everybody at SMB and mid-market discovered multi-threading for the first time? I was like, what do you mean you've only had one contact in the account? What do you mean?
Yeah, it's interesting.
So I think, it's a bit of both. I don't think everything's drag and drop. I don't think we should take everything. But if we go back to the conversation about what serves the buyer, what makes it easier for the buyer to buy in a way that is frictionless, maps don't, multi-threading does.
But I think, there's a fine line between the maps or the communication plan to make sure that customer success doesn't become a dumpster fire, right? But there's so many out there speaking to even that, where they've now got reactivation requirements of customer success because they've never seen what customer success is supposed to be. But that's a whole nother conversation.
I know. Well, and I work with a lot of service-based orgs that aren't subscription models, aren't recurring revenue models. So that's even a different layer on top of all of this. Well,
we teach how to apply that in CRO school from the full cycle BD or AE and what the handover needs to be from the presentation day or a quoting day to all of the key stakeholders, the key users within the room, and then they map out what it's going to look like if you would like to work with us, Leslie, and they literally go through the plan. But obviously that's not going to work for a small base subscription because it may not be worth your time unless you're able to condense that within a really shortened demo. But it's interesting to see the fundamentals that are still being lost completely across the funnel, that's for sure.
So coming back to that buyer first and buyer centric approach, then Leslie, is it more about relevance versus something being like hyper personal then?
Yes. Yeah. Hard stop. There are so few sellers that are selling a product that has a CV or an ARR that is high enough to justify contact level personalization in all of their outreach. And they should probably be running a key accounts or an ABM approach. Like they should not be doing the type of outbound that I talk about when I'm talking about, hey, here's how to build your segmented lists and do segment specific value props. Because what I'm really talking about is personalization at scale, but it is persona level. Personalization at scale, not contact level personalization. So if you can do both, relevance and personalization, sweet, great. Very few people get that right. And if you have to choose one, relevance is more important. And when we think about how we are spending our time and spending our days, like if I am on the receiving end of an email, I would much rather have you spend an hour researching the market and researching my customer's market so that you can tell me something that I maybe don't already know about what the market dynamics are, than spending an hour creeping on my Instagram to be like, hey, looks like you also like books. You do books? Anyways, here's my widget.
And Leslie, what's your take on the obsession with AI, in particular using things like Clay to pull together and kind of fake that personalization and that relevance. How have you seen that being used right now, and what's your stance on it?
Clay is slick. It's super cool. I'm still a Zoom Info girly. I used Zoom Info when it was discover.org. Like I was literally a beta user of discover.org. I'm really dating myself here. At that same time, we used to fax our proposals over because an 8-page document was too big to send over email. I'm not even that old. Technology moves quickly. And we're seeing that with AI, that it's become this like shiny object silver bullet. The primary use I'm seeing for AI is people are doing more of the wrong type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's disappointing. But man, I am seeing some, like Clay is a super slick tool, and the best application for it is list building, where it can create these really tight lists where they are immediately building in multiple layers of segmentation as well as really strong signals. That's incredible. That's really giving us as sellers an opportunity to reach the right person at the right time. But where I think it lets us down is the right message, because what I see the failure being is connecting the dots. And so they'll be like, oh, we know that if somebody has just gotten a funding round, they're much more likely to buy. Or if we know somebody is new in seat in a role, they're much more likely to buy. But that's where you see the disingenuous personalization. Congrats on your Series B. Congrats on your new job role. And we're not connecting the dots between like why they have a new problem to solve and how we can help them solve that problem without just like feature dumping and doing disingenuous, irrelevant personalization.
Yeah. Do you feel that it needs to be as well as, not instead of? So what George and I see is people add all of these layers within those tables as an excuse for not doing market validation. They're like, hypothetically, they should be in market because of dirt, whereas they could have just gone to the horse's mouth and actually got that validation and got first person intent. It should, in our eyes, it should be as well as, not instead of, because obviously now there's like this micro niche of the GDM engineers that are the instead of, in not the as well as, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
good.
Like they're choosing assumptions over asking questions.
So they're building a layer of
Yeah.
stuff to hypothesize multiple layers and signals and triggers, whereas it should be used in conjunction with validating your market to bring then marketing into the fold, but that's not how they're doing it. So like you and I would go and ask the customers all of the questions that would be within their buying track and find out signals and then find out timing, right? So right message, right channel, right offer, etc.
Yeah.
That's not how they're doing it. They've just built this fugazi in between. Like I'm saying, Clay is great, but it needs to be used the right way. And it's same as every other AI tool. They're doing more dumb stuff, the same as the SDR industrial complex, more dumb stuff worse, not better stuff better. That's what we're seeing. Yeah, I was just interested to see if you see
Yeah.
like there's like, yeah, ops guys also that have now become like GTM engineers that have never actually done the front facing roles, that don't know how to market validate, that are layering tools and
Yeah.
saying, hire me to do this, but I've never actually done it.
Yeah. I'm trying, you're seeing my thinking phase because I'm trying to think through if you have never spent any time with your buyers, or even if you were maybe like
Mhm,
so early stage you don't have customers you can reach out to, but if you have never
mhm,
spent time like with your buyers or in your buyers world, how are you even making confident assumptions about
mhm.
what matters to them? Like I'm failing to grasp how they
Yeah.
can have a level of confidence in the relevance of their messaging that they even feel like it's worth sending.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, don't worry. We have, Jordan and I have some collective thoughts on seeing multiple agencies that are doing this on a consistent basis. Like we love all the advancement of tools, but they have to be applied in the right way in conjunction with validating your market. Because otherwise, what are you really doing?
Yeah.
You're you've got to fast train to do hypotheticals more without having any actual.
Yeah. A phrase that I come back to a lot is connecting the dots. Like some of the most important work that we can be doing as sellers right now is connecting the dots, because it's not enough to have the signals. It's not enough to have the segmented list. If we are not taking the time to think, what is my point of view about why this person should give a shit about me and my product and having a conversation, then it's going to be very difficult to earn the right to their time, to their attention.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's doing the hard work then, and there's no real kind of shortcuts. And Leslie, for context, I'm primarily a marketer, and we've been working a lot with Adam recently. And anytime Adam, teaches me something, and Adam had like an old school mentor, and I think that's why he's so good at these fundamentals, and he's been doing them for so long too. The marketer in me is always trying to look for a faster way to do it. And Adam always has to just like whip me and rein me back in and be like, no, you can't do that. Like, stop trying to take shortcuts. Like, is that the case, that sometimes there are just no shortcuts, especially when it comes to doing something like earning the right?
There's probably not a shortcut to earning the right, because what you are earning is trust, and you can't really shortcut. You can't hack earning trust, and I don't think that should be the thing that we aspire to. But I will say that, like, I use a tool called Omni for my account research now. It gives me account research that would have taken me, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours in about 10 minutes. And yes, I still need to go through and read first I need to know what questions to ask it. And then because I've asked it the smart questions, then I can go through and I can read the results. But I still then need to sit with it and be like, okay, and how do these different pieces of information stack together? And what does this tell me? So that helps me develop my point of view going into the discovery call. So that is a shortcut. Like, I am moving a lot faster. But I think, like, one of my beefs is that the way that people are trying to shortcut is they're like, oh, we're using AI to completely automate low value activities. And then they'll talk about prospecting. And I'm like, but prospecting is a low value activity. Like, why are we treating the gift of communicating with our prospects like a burden that we need to like offload to our robot overlords? So I think it's a balancing act. Like, what can we automate that doesn't take away from building meaningful human interactions? Because the brain still craves that meaningful and genuine human interaction. And like, then what can we use to fast track some of those high value tasks?
Yeah.
And speaking of, I don't want to upset you. I know it's towards the end of your day there, but speaking of things that do annoy you, Leslie, are there other sales training practices that you see out there that you just think, can we please just throw this in the trash can? Like, what is it that you see out there that you're like, we have to stop this?
I think anybody that teaches like tactics or tricks, I generally find that like a tactic is like, quick question, or like, we're gonna send a bunch of emails that say invoice overdue so that we can dupe people into high open rates, or like they're things that maybe work, but they will only work for a little while until they stop working, because you're not getting better at sales. You're just tricking somebody into giving you their attention. And it just goes against everything that we've talked about, right? If you have to scam, manipulate, trick somebody into giving you their attention, that is eroding trust from the very first moment that they spend with you. And since I deeply believe that the foundation of long-term sales success is built on trust, that's one that really does not sit well with me.
Does that come down to how...
What's yours?
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask if...
Wait, you're not getting out of this. No, you're not getting out of this without...
Oh, look, I'll defer to Adam. I'm but a humble marketer that is here to learn. So, Adam, I'll defer to you.
Wow. Yeah, I think... Okay, I'll go further than that. I think, who are we learning those tactics from? And what is their background to speak to commercial oversight? So what I see is that layer of people that play in that space might have been the best SDR in the world, but it doesn't mean that they know the full function across the funnel. They don't understand marketing cycles. They don't understand demand. They don't understand handoffs into customer success because they've never done it. So they might have been really good at door opening, and they play in that space where they can use 3 high tactics to say, yep, I can get you into these live conversations, but that doesn't mean that they can actually understand commercial acumen. And there's a big gap between that and that gap is only getting bigger. Whereas now I think people have realized what I've been saying for the last 5 years. Whereas when I started, I know people thought I was crazy when I'm trying to speak to the whole revenue alignment architecture and say, if we do these actions, we validate the market, we bring marketing into the fold, they've got timing, they're commercially viable, they've connected to that process. This is what we do when we get to discovery or presentation. This is how we lead into customer success. These are just pillar fundamentals. And if we do these things right, we've got a pretty high chance that we're going to win because you've built rapport, you've built relationship, and you've built the trust right from the start. Whereas that's not where the SDR door opening tactics start from, and they don't understand what happens next. Like, you can ask them and they'll go crazy.
It's so that brings up such an important thing, because a piece of feedback that I hear often, usually in like my comments on social media posts, but it worked this one time. And I think that it is important to say out loud that a lot of these strategies, these like tricks, these tactics, this like growth at all cost predictable playbook stuff, it's not that it doesn't work. It does, but it works in the short term, and it works by getting short-term results that sabotage your ability to then further penetrate the market and have like durable long-term success. And so I think that's worth stating out loud, because people will be like, these Adam and Leslie don't know what they're talking about. George seems like he's on top of it, but those two, this works for me, but it will only work for a little while, and it will work at the expense of your long-term success.
Yes. Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, that's the golden soundbite right there, I think. Do we think, though, that teams are taking this tactical approach? I mean, SDRs take that tactical approach. Is it because of the way they're measured, though? Because, I mean, if you're measured on just trying to book meetings, then you will do anything you can to book more of those meetings, and you don't really care what happens next. So is that why? Is it the measurements? And does that then mean that the solution really kind of has to come from the top? Because how else do you fix this?
Yeah, it's their comp structures, right? What is the number one thing they're compensated on? Putting meetings in calendars, and they're not held accountable to like how many meetings actually meet the ICP criteria, how many of them are then qualified, how many convert into funnel. And I do not think that their entire wage should be built on that, because I understand that can be very unfair if you have some incompetent AEs working at your organization. But if we are not bonusing out our SDRs on some of those later stage metrics to give them comp incentives to give a shit, then why would they? I wouldn't. If I'm 23 years old in an SDR role, I just probably want my money to be able to go out and, I don't know, buy martinis. I don't give a shit about like your long-term funnel goals.
Yeah. And I guess that's why we have built within CRO School. We believe that business development function should go back to being measured on market validations, and how many of those are handed to marketing, and how many of those then go to opportunity and then become fruitful contracts at customer success. If we could standardize that as the measurement, we probably wouldn't have any of these problems. But the next problem, and the obvious problem that we then have, is that none of these teams know how to do that. So that's why we built what we built. But yeah, it's interesting.
I have a question. Do we have time for me to ask a question?
Yeah.
Of course.
MQLs. How would you build in a market validation measurement for MQLs?
Yeah. So I do it around the other way. So what we used to do, because we come from a minority market, Leslie, in Australia, every single touch that we had to make sense at account level. So maybe that's how we became hyper relevant for the account and where we could get them through every action, right? So if you look at it like this, is how, to answer your question directly, what I would do is go back to measuring the first action is from business development. to build rapport, build relationship, get account level information, which we call market validation or cataloging the market. And then you literally are then measured on the actual MQL, which becomes a SQL, by how many of those business development walk over to marketing. We've got an internal template that we've built at CRO School. And then how many of those then go with the right timing based on the market intelligence that you've received from first party intent. That how many of those then go to open opportunity because you've got right message, right channel, right offer against the market validation that you've conducted from business development. If that becomes the measure, and then that becomes what a standardized SQL or MQL should be, between the two, you've got alignment, 2, you've got less people, and 3, you're far more commercially viable with a higher strike rate. We haven't really reinvented the wheel. We've just gone what used to happen in old school sales and marketing. If we look at it from enterprise level, that's what happened, like large recruitment contracts. So Bill Pollock who built Drake in, I think, 1956 don't quote me on the exact date, in Canada. He started doing this with like recruitment contracts for like large contract acquisition in the 1950s. So it's not anything new. What George and I have done is just taken that, and what my mentor and a guy named Mark Revel taught me is how to apply this in every single industry, no matter the market. Because it doesn't really matter, right? Like if you're selling finance or you're selling large contract SaaS or you're selling even lawn mowing services, the questions are still the same. You catalog the market. So Leslie, who did you use last time? Did you like them? What did you like about it? Oh, okay. Did they do a good job? Are you in a contract with them? Like, do you have like a direct debit? Oh, okay. So if you come back next, like, are they coming back next time, or is it okay for me to show you what we can do? Excellent. So the catalog's the same across every single industry. It's just that's not how they're measured anymore, so they won't do that. And one, they don't know how to do it, and they don't believe that the market will give that information. But if you just talk to people as people, you'll find that they actually will. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. So I would move back to how many market validations that we can achieve as the first pillar, how many we can hand to marketing, and how many of those at the right time then go to opportunity. That would standardize the measurement. And if that was the upstream measurement also for how venture capital actually measured the companies within the seed rounds, we wouldn't have this misalignment at market. But that's going to take some that's going to take some massaging, I'll say, because generally, as we know, we're coaching them on what go-to-market should be. But it doesn't mean, because they're standardized of how they like to measure it, which pushes the wrong measurements at market, which kind of washes out all the commercial acumen. That's what I see.
And just to add to that as well, I think when teams like are going and doing that market validation, like what we've seen for marketing is that it kind of releases marketing from the shackles of trying to drive MQLs, which, when you're a marketer, like we know things that really help are like building trust with the market, educational content, like that kind of stuff really is a force multiplier for sales. But as long as we're tasked with like driving MQLs, like all of our budget and time, if that's how we're measured, inevitably goes to that. And that's when we start doing things like ebook plays and shoveling leads over to sales. And then that just then continues this distrust. And the whole reason we're trying to do that is because no one has figured out that question of timing. Who is in market? When are they in market? And so then that kind of got left to marketing to try and figure that out. And we're trying to use all these different databases and tools to figure that out. But I think probably the massive breakdown there still is between sales and marketing shows that we haven't figured that out. And really the best way to collect that is through these first-hand market validations. And when you do that, and when that question of like timing is solved, it really allows marketing to going back to doing what we do best as well.
And
I love that because the alternative is you're begging people for their attention, and then they're begrudgingly giving it to you to get this gatekept resource that they may or may not actually want. And then you're begging sales to reach out to folks that they know are not going to turn into SQLs because they aren't actually market validated leads.
Yeah. I'd go even further than that. If you've got business development people that are good enough at that process, you're going to see that even average sellers following that process properly become, instead of being outside sales, become inside sales, because they've only got to follow up the ones that are already looking to buy within their buying cycle with the stuff that's showing that they're going to get them there from marketing coming into the fold, and with permission to go back to them at the right time. So it makes those people look amazing, it makes them feel amazing, and it makes them feel empowered, but it also obviously solves the marketing and sales misalignment, which should be a no-brainer, but people seem to push back on validating your market, or they don't heavily understand why that's important to build the time of marketing. Yeah.
I had a post like a week ago, and the hook was, are people allergic to questions? And I thought it would be like a softball post. People would be like, yeah, questions. We all like questions. The amount of people that disagreed with me in the comments, they're like, no, like I'm not allergic to questions. Sellers aren't allergic to questions. Ah! It was very much a post that like proved its own point, because nobody asked any questions. They just couldn't wait to tell me how good they were asking questions. And then I pushed back. And of course, some of the questions that they're telling me are the like, so what keeps you up at night? Like just absolute bullshit. But a lot of them were like, yes, I have a list of 10 questions that I ask on every single call. And it was like an interrogation. I'm like, that is not how you figure out whether or not somebody is a good fit to buy from you.
But that also speaks to like tonality and how you ask. So if you and I ask those questions, we'll probably get away with it. But if junior sellers ask those questions into C-suite, I guarantee they're not going to get away with it, and that's going to build market abrasion at market. So that, yeah.
If I ask somebody what keeps them up at night, take my fucking phone away from me.
Yeah, I'm not saying we should. I'm saying that we would get away with it because we'd be able to make it land, right? But yeah, that speaks to probably a wider problem. Business development is now not seen as the promotion point from customer success, which is what used to happen back in the day. It's seen as the entry point for the SDR.
Yeah.
Obviously, sales. Yeah, that's half of the problem. Whereas if people look at what used to happen prior to 2008, people got promoted, or a chance to be in business development came from being really good at customer success and understanding deal tracks and what was in the commercial packs to get deals on, to go to settlement, to make them approved. Now that's also washed out of market, and people don't appear to understand what I'm saying. Whereas if they just looked at that on paper value, hang on, you'd have more senior people that can speak to the people that are in the right roles to make the decision, and that also know what they're talking about. It seems like a no-brainer, but yeah, again, it's washed out of the market. So,
Leslie, I feel like we've only kind of just scratched the surface on your process and your approach, but fortunately for us and our audience, you have a book coming out, Profit Generating Pipeline. Would you be able to tell us a bit more about that? I'm very excited for it. I will absolutely be reading it. Can you please tell our audience more about it?
Oh my gosh, I would love to. I've also been bullying Adam into having some sort of event that I can come over and speak at, so I can use it as an excuse to come visit. I'll just keep bullying him via LinkedIn, TikTok, and WhatsApp to bring that to life. Maybe I'll finagle it to be able to do like a book launch party there. But yes, the book, Profit Generating Pipeline, 3 parts. Part 1 very much is from a sales leadership perspective, and it talks about what we talked about, the importance of building trust, not just with your reps, but creating that system of trust with the buyers, with the reps, with your cross-functional collaborators, with your leadership, because that is the foundation that is going to both get your reps to follow your lead when you talk about the strategy that you want to bring to life and the repeatable processes you want them to use. And it's also going to give you a long enough leash that you don't fall victim to the VP of sales that's replaced every 12 months. Part 1, and then part 2 is the actual 9-step process where I take folks through lots of what we described today, right? Like the strategic approach to territory management, what makes sales messaging actually work, how to build it into sequences, how to lead great sales conversations and earn the right to your prospects' attention, to their time, to their consideration, ultimately business. And then we wrap it up with how to make that repeatable, strong emphasis on productivity and bias for action and process for continuous improvement. So please, folks, go buy the books. You can buy it at salesledgtm.com/book, or literally on any retailer. The day it went up on Barnes & Noble, I was like, holy shit, I wrote a book. Look at this book. So thank you in advance for your support.
No, that's amazing and something to be incredibly proud of. And I love that, the whole message is that we need to build trust with the market, but there's actually an actionable way to do it, and you've got a firm process behind it. And that's what every single person, every single team needs, is repeatable processes. So I encourage everyone listening to make sure they check it out.
And I will say, on record, we would love to have you come and speak at our first event after we... so we've built a market validation of an ongoing live pulse check, which is more than a scorecard called the Pulse, which is a report for benchmarks reports. That will obviously lead into founder discussions and tables, and that will also lead into an event. And we would love to have you come and speak at it when we get there.
Okay, folks, you heard it here first. No take backs.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Leslie, you've been so generous with your time. Adam, you too, as always. Leslie, is there anything else that you really wanted to cover or share before we close the conversation out?
No, this was just really nice. I do feel like Adam's famous last words are going to be we should have done more market validation. So that's my main takeaway from today.
Look,
that was a really good Adam impersonation.
Yeah. I feel like, again, Leslie's quoted me again, so I've really made it. There's probably not much more for me to do.
Take the day off. We're done here.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. All right, well, everyone, make sure you got to earn the right and do your market validations, everybody. Leslie, thank you so much for your time. Leslie Venetz, I assume the place you want people to find you is LinkedIn. Is that probably the best spot for people to keep up with you and follow you?
Find me on LinkedIn. Yes, chronically online.
Beautiful. Adam, you too on LinkedIn?
Yeah, or, look, come to me on less saturated channels like TikTok, because that's where you can find people that are very busy.
It is where we became friends, so yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic advice. Awesome. All right, well, thank you very, very much, both. I really, really appreciate your time. Leslie, have a nice evening, and thank you so much, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, gents.